That's the other one. Good. Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here today. We're broadcasting live from Park City, Utah. And Shlomo, where are you?
I'm actually in Panama City, Panama.
Panama City, Panama. How about that? And Josh?
I'm in Memphis, Tennessee.
Memphis, Tennessee. And Ryan, where are you?
I'm in Los Angeles.
You look like you're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I like it.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for being here today. We have a very interesting real estate tech play, and I think you'll find it fascinating. Just for the record, we're recording this, and so if you want to revisit it, it'll be on the Family Office Insights YouTube channel in a day or so. And you can also, if you think there are others in your world and your network and that would find this interesting, you can share that link with them as well. And also, if this is interesting to you and you have others that might be interested in hearing more about it, we're going to make sure that you're in touch with everybody on the team here. So feel free to contact them directly. Just a little Zoom housekeeping. We can't hear or see you, but we welcome questions throughout. So when they come to mind, put them in the chat box of the Q&A and we'll get to as many as we can. We've got a lot of people coming on today. So we'll do our best to get to as many questions. So with that, Shlomo, welcome. Thank you for being here, everybody.
Thank you, Arthur. I really appreciate it. So my name is Shlomo Chop. I am the founder and CEO of Shop Fulfill Corporation, the idea behind retailOS. It's a commerce, logistics, technology platform, and it's optimized and it's brought to life by commercial real estate. That's the platform component, the patent and patent pending, as you guys can all read for yourselves. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Joshua Pogue, who is our real estate partner in this venture, to sort of introduce himself and talk a bit about his background.
All right, appreciate it, Shlomo. So as Shlomo mentioned, I'm Josh Pogue with Pogue Shopping Centers, and we are the leaders in the lifestyle center world. And so here we go. So we have been developing, us and our predecessor have been developing lifestyle centers for about 35 years. And we have developed more lifestyle centers than anybody else. And we currently manage and lease more lifestyle centers than anybody else in the country. And what we mean by a lifestyle center is an outdoor center with lots of landscaping, hardscaping, nicer tenants. I mean, historically, the tenants were the Williams-Sonoma, Pottery Barns, J. Crews of the world. We've evolved, and now we have Lululemon and Athleta and Anthropologie and Trader Joe's and Fresh Market, et cetera. So we have a wide range of tenants that locate in our outdoor centers. And we are constantly trying to innovate and to keep up with the changing times of retail, because retail has changed dramatically in the last 20 years, and even more dramatically in the last 2 years. And so I'll tell you that, frankly, what happened was we were always looking for ways to innovate. And we've brought in other uses into our property, whether that's office, whether that's residential. But safe to say that I never thought we'd be bringing industrial into our properties. And so about a year ago, I got a call from Shlomo and Ryan out of the blue to discuss micro-fulfillment on our properties and to see if that would be of interest. And so, yes, it was very much of interest to figure out how to blend industrial with retail, because of the e-commerce platform and COVID and the pandemic have really accelerated this about how we merge the offline with the online. They coexist, and I won't belabor the point. I'm sure everybody's read the articles about how e-commerce really flourishes better with bricks and mortar than isolated. But that's where we've been working with Shlomo and Ryan to try to figure out how to blend the micro-fulfillment with the retail platform. So we have been in the acquisition of lifestyle center business for about the past 10 years. We were developers prior to that. And right now in the retail world, there's not a ton of development going on. So we focus on acquisitions, and that was put on hold prior to the pandemic. But now we're seeing an uptick in sales as pricing has come down from institutional holders. We're seeing a lot of retailers that want to come into the outdoor world. And so we're having good leasing, actually great leasing volumes over the last 6 months, especially. And so now we're trying to figure out the path for the future. So we are currently bidding on a couple of lifestyle centers out there in the market, and we're working with retailOS, Shlomo and Ryan, to be added to the process. And at this point, I'll hand it off to Shlomo so that he can describe how how retailOS blends into the lifestyle center world. So Shlomo, you want to take it from here?
Yes, thank you very much. And Josh, it's been amazing working with you over the past year, just getting to this point, and working with someone who's backed with some of the largest institutions out there and has a vision and looking to push it forward. So we really look forward on some of the deals that we're bidding on to sort of take that to the next level. A little background on myself. So I started out in commercial real estate in the prop tech space. So I was basically, someday I'll be able to move the slide to the next page, which I just have, right? So I started out in the prop tech space in 2003, I think before prop tech was prop tech. I was trying to explain to real estate people how to use technology, and I then decided, this is not working. They weren't ready for it. So I moved on into deal making. In 2009, when the market crashed, I self-taught myself CMBS, the securitized debt world, and been on the distressed debt side for a while, representing borrowers, helping them deal with the special servicers, et cetera. And over that time and thereafter, I've gained an expertise with regards to financial structuring, innovation, and also with regards to property operations and turnaround as well. In 15, 16, I joined up with a family office here in New York, and we've been buying opportunistically. Family office, it's a real estate family office, Superior Realty Group. I then looked at retail and industrial, and I felt there was a challenge in the market at that time, and still is today, where industrial is backed by e-commerce companies that just cannot scale profitably. And on the retail side, even if you get a decent retailer in, at a minimum, their prototype will change over time. And once that changes, you then put in a retail that no longer obviously has any type of relevance to where they want to be today. So looking at a pretty large deal in New York, about 100-acre deal, I'm like, we got two options. We got retail and we got industrial. Hold on, what if we combined it? What if we actually brought the product to the shopping center and be able to sell at a store and do e-commerce in the same product? Spoke to many different companies. They weren't ready at that point. I decided we were going to file a patent application. We filed a patent application. We've gotten the first patent granted in February, relating to fulfilling product from a shopping center using micro-fulfillment robotics. And our goal is to essentially put together a national infrastructure, locations in every major market that not only bridge the downtown to the market, so basically a regional, and is interconnected. We have interconnected decentralized fulfillment and retail as well. And that's, we'll dig in on that a little bit more as we go forward. But about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was meeting with a friend of mine who actually works for one of the largest retail real estate owners out there. And I said, you know what, there's this concept, which is great. And I'm a real estate guy and I understand this, but who's the right person to partner with, as the same background in technology, that understands retail, doesn't feel that retail is dead because e-commerce showed up, and doesn't feel that e-commerce is not going to happen. Like, who's could blend it? And introduced to our next speaker, who's a co-founder in Shop Fulfill Corporation on this retailOS concept, and that's Ryan Wolfe. Ryan, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. I'm Ryan Wolfe, the co-founder of retailOS. Shlomo and I connected, like you said, 2.5 years ago. My background, though, is the counterpoint to both Josh and Shlomo, and that I've invested the last 25 years of my career in the consumer space with broad and deep experience, including product, marketing, digital, retail, supply chain, and international. And something unique about my background is both for large enterprise retail business, namely Gap Inc., and also early stage companies. So Gap Inc., Banana Republic, but early stage companies, including The Honest Company. Outside of just my primary career path, I am a mentor for Amplify LA, which is an early stage venture capital group. So I'm very much entrenched into the world of launching digital native brands and all the challenges that they face. And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, I am on the advisory board and counsel of retail for George Mason University. So I dabble in both retail, I dabble in digital. What really grabbed my attention in the connection when I originally met Shlomo 2.5 years ago was clearly seeing and experiencing a merchant problem in our shopping centers. And to clarify, a large void between challenger brands coming in and complementing the co-tenancy with incumbent brands. Now, previously, retail was the primary go-to-market strategy. But in the world of technology, obviously, I'm not going to restate too much of the obvious here, but it became really easy to market yourself and expose yourself to a broad audience, to build a website and to start taking sales, and in some cases in the early days, in a viable and profitable way. However, those brands that are becoming very interested and most desired aren't necessarily reflected in a lot of these shopping centers. And so the idea of retail as a service and creating an accessible platform for them to actually build out a presence and expand their customer base and business was very interesting to me. What Shlomo had in his idea that really grabbed me and brought me into this project as a co-founder is the notion of proximity, that breaking the convention of having one mega warehouse and just shipping it all over the country, that there's actually value in bringing product closer in proximity for purposes of delivery. Customers can get it faster, it's cheaper, but also for the purposes of utilizing that inventory in more meaningful ways at a co-located retail center. Okay, so that's my summary, Shlomo. I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate it. So what we'll do over here is first talk generally about the challenges facing the industry, and then talk about how we solve it, and then we'll delve into some graphics, sort of explain to you guys what it is, the concept that we're doing. But I think the key thing that's important, I'll hand it over to Josh to talk a little bit about some of the challenges from a retail and a shopping center perspective. But essentially, the key thing what we're doing is that, most people could come up with a concept, with an idea to bring to market. And there's a couple of challenges. The first challenge, well, a few challenges. The first challenge is that sometimes it's this concept that's removed from reality. It's like, okay, let's go to Mars, right? It's a great thing. I mean, JFK was great. We're going to go to the moon, right? It was a big dream, right? And there are increments between that point and where you are. And there's obviously a lot of interest in the VC world to focus on those types of investments. But the reality is that not every one of those ideas gain traction because of the challenges to get to that point. So for me, and us, it was important for us to be able to have it be incremental and also have it be revolutionary. So there's a bridge to get to where you need to get. I think the second thing over there is with regards to funding, right? When you fund a new concept in any way, it's very difficult to do it in a cost-effective manner, especially a high capital-intensive project. When we group it with commercial real estate, we're able to put a hard asset there behind it, and we're able to finance the hard asset. And then the concept part of it is actually a small part of its cash flow initially, right? So we're buying it based on existing cash flow, but also we're able to finance the property and have it make sense on a bigger picture. And I think the third thing that happens by doing that, the third component is that it's cash flowing on day one. The returns are there day one. And the way we're looking at this is that all our investments have to work independently. It has to be fundamentally a good property. It has to be a property that could be improved, a property that has the right IRRs and the right value. So while it's real estate backed, it is also a business. It has a business to it and different components of business, as we discussed. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Josh, talk a little bit about what you're seeing with shopping centers, redevelopments, the retailers that you have conversations with, and I'll let Ryan talk a little more about the e-commerce challenges, innovation, and I'll hopefully add a little value as well. Josh?
Yeah, I mean, let me kind of start off. I mean, Shlomo, you brought up the IRRs and the returns. And so this is fundamentally why we are looking in a lot of the institutional capital partners that we have traditionally worked with are looking at lifestyle centers again. And the cap rates on, say, multifamily or industrial are absolutely ridiculous now. I mean, at low enough cap rates that we never thought we'd see in our life. I mean, sub 4% cap rates, and even in secondary markets, you're talking mid 4 cap rates. And so everybody's looking at that and saying those return objectives just don't, or those returns don't meet our objectives. And so people want to get back into retail. The cap rates are still in the 7 to 8% range. So I mean, you're talking about 250, 300 basis points higher than multifamily or industrial, and trying to figure out which concepts to invest in. I mean, you can buy a triple net lease, a Whole Foods lease for, 4 cap also because of the Amazon credit behind it. But when you look at the blended shopping center, you're being blunt, you don't want to invest in a mall right now because the traffic is dwindling and the department stores are declining and sales are declining, et cetera. But during COVID, this just kind of was a proof of concept that when especially in the Southeast, like we started seeing our traffic return last June, like June of 2020. And people wanted to be outdoors. People wanted to play in the green spaces we created. We create experience for the consumer. And the retailers were noticing that. They track the same sales and the same traffic, and they were recognizing that a lot of the lifestyle centers they were in didn't lose nearly the amount of sales that they lost in the malls. And secondarily, we've seen significant increases in the traffic and those sales since coming out of the pandemic. So fundamentally, that's why a lot of the institutional capital is starting to look at the lifestyle centers again. And we're talking about 7 to 7.5% unleveraged cap rates. And so when you get leverage in there and with the growth and with the retailOS layered on, we're talking mid-teen returns. That's kind of what we're targeting, something that will use our management development expertise and layering on the retailOS. And the retailers that we're talking to today, some of them, we don't have any Targets or Walmarts, but those are the ones that can fund these capital initiatives themselves. But when you look at the smaller retailers out there, and especially the ones that maybe don't even have a bricks and mortar footprint yet and are online, they don't have the experience and the wherewithal, the capital wherewithal to be able to invest in their e-commerce businesses as much as like the Targets and Walmarts. And so that's where we're trying to blend those efficiencies, as Shlomo mentioned, into one concept to offer that to retailers, with the hope that or the expectation that those retailers thrive online, but then we can also lease to them in our centers to create additional lease momentum for our shopping centers. So that's kind of where the challenge is and what we're expecting, what we're implementing right now. But Ryan, you know the retailer side a lot better than I do, so I'll hand it off to you to talk about their perspective.
Hey guys, 1 second if it's okay. What Shlomo is suggesting is that the real estate investment has to stand on its own, and it gives cover to the eventual revenue associated with retailOS, and that that what you're suggesting, Josh, is that the lifestyle centers have much better cap rates than what would otherwise be a 4 or 4.5 cap rate. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. The cap rates on retail are fundamentally much higher because people see retail as being risky because of e-commerce, and they see industrial as a play because e-commerce players like Amazon have been building like crazy. And so therefore there's huge demand for industrial properties in the country and driving down the cap rates. And so what we're trying to do is not only look at the fundamental of the lifestyle center because we believe in it long term, but layer on that micro fulfillment / industrial on top of the lifestyle center to add industrial to the retail environment and combine that e-commerce with the bricks and mortar. So it's kind of the holy grail that everybody's been working on. And like I said, you look at Target fulfills, Shlomo, is it 95% of their e-commerce through their stores?
Yeah, it depends on the quarterly report, I guess. Yeah, and they're saving about 95%, they say, in cost on e-commerce fulfillment as well by fulfilling from store, which is a little different than the way we're doing specifically, but generally it's along the same lines. And one thing I just want to add in, which is extremely important, e-commerce is not a profitable venture if you're scaling, meaning if you're going cross country, if you're growing your business beyond a certain point. And we believe, at least I believe, is that as we roll out retailOS across shopping centers in every market, the inherent demand for centralized fulfillment will drop significantly. I could tell you, I mean, of multiple institutional investors that will not look at industrial that's not last mile. What we're trying to do here is actually share costs and actually blend the e-commerce and in-store together to be able to optimize not only, you know, the advertising and connection to the customer, but also the inventory. So that's something that I think is extremely important to understand. So if you know of a brand that goes onto Shopify, and Shopify is a great platform, more than likely they are in a terrible situation today, especially due to iOS 14.5 with different privacies that are put in place and digital marketing costs that have gone through the roof. And by doing what we're doing, and not only we're not abandoning e-commerce, we're actually bringing e-commerce into the shopping center. We're saying that the store and the shopping center that's closest to the customer is the best place to have this blended mixed-use product that is both industrial and retail, but not in the sense that you think, you know, you got these big docks and big, you know, large trucks that are pulling in and out, but rather in a much more finessed way, almost like a distributed network. And that's sort of how we're looking at this.
That's super clear. Thank you. And Ryan, didn't mean to jump in front of you there, but take it away.
Yeah, it's no problem. I just wanted to make a couple points that I think are quite relevant to how we're thinking about retailOS. And the first one that I talk about frequently is the merchant problem. The easiest answer to conclude why one mall or shopping location is better from another, in my opinion, is quite simple. What is the tenancy mix? People are magnetically attracted, hate to sound so trite and simple here, they're just magnetically attracted to the best brands and the best product. What we have today's world is that a lot of these up and coming challenger brands are being cultivated and developing a big audience online. And that's fantastic. That's part of the evolution of commerce. But now in today's world, what they're facing, and I am a DTC operator myself, so this is very close to home, is that acquisition costs in the last 5 years, on average, have gone up 60%. This is unfathomable. There was a heyday when the Facebook ad platform was just really, really hot in 2012, maybe to 2017 and 18, and you could scale a brand online. And so all of a sudden, when those headwinds kind of come into play, it comes back to something that I tested 10 years ago when I was working at Gap Inc., is to just ascertain what is the value of e-commerce to a retail store. So essentially pre-shopping, lead generation, laying in bed at night or whatever, shopping, and I see something I like, I want to go check it out. The indexes for how powerful that can be are phenomenal, right? And then the other side of this, if you conversely look at how much of e-commerce is driven by people who have seen a store is pretty profound. I don't want to go too deep on the sort of convincing of the analytics, but what I would say is that there continues to be a trend when you look through the S1 filings of the likes of Warby Parker and various others. When they plant a store in the market, the overall commercial activity blossoms. And this is a critical component and answer, because I have personally lived through the privacy updates on Apple. I clearly understand that it is making my CPM, cost per clicks, just my sort of default way of doing business much, much more challenging. So last point is this: bridge infrastructure. What we're solving for is these simple questions. How could we make it easy for digital brands to build a multi-channel retail presence? Number one. So let's think about all the barriers and let's just move them to the side. That makes a viable business on our hand. And number two, how could we also create value by bringing product closer to customers, which Shlomo's going to talk about in a second here on this presentation. And really, if you think about what we're doing, an important concept to hold on to here is that we are magnifiers and enablers of commerce and also property value. Both of them are extremely important. And where you look, where tens of billions of dollars of value has been nurtured and cultivated, look at what Shopify did. They are just simply enablers of commerce. This is what we're trying to do in kind of an online off world. When you look at Farfetch, again, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise that was trying to digitize and run e-commerce storefronts for lots of high-end boutiques. Farfetch, again, just an enabler of commerce. We are a bridge infrastructure play that opens up another channel that enables commerce and brings better products to centers that ultimately drives more traffic and creates more value within the property.
Thank you, Ryan. So I want to encourage anyone that has any questions to please throw it at us, and we'd be glad to address anything. I brought up over here a simple diagram of how this works. So traditionally, retailers have a centralized distribution center. They then distribute it to stores on pallets. It comes in and it's put on the shelf. And they then have an e-commerce warehouse where it's individual pieces put on a shelf, also known as eaches in the fulfillment business. They are not connected from a inventory perspective. It's not optimized. The customer that shops online often has an issue returning to store if they do have stores and exchanging it for what they need, because the product mix is different online and offline. So for that and multiple other reasons, the goal is to basically combine all the inventory in every market, obviously all the relevant inventory in every market catered to those individuals, where we take the distances between the customer and the store and we shorten that, so that the customer feels that even if they order online, they can go to store and exchange it and touch and feel, and any delivery that happens pretty quickly. Just as an example, we dropped down a location. We're looking at a property right now, a property that's actually owned by Josh that we're working on in Pennsylvania, in a very high-end area. We literally could ship next day for the price of ground to probably a quarter of the country, just like that, from an e-commerce perspective. And the price is ridiculous, because this promise that Amazon has put out there, piggybacking on all the multiple other revenue streams to prop it up. It's almost like the pitcher that doesn't get the rotator cuff surgery and he builds up the muscles around it, right? So the rotator cuff is still damaged, but it fixes over time. That's essentially what Amazon has done. We're able to fulfill that strategy with smaller brands that don't have that type of subsidizing force that's there as well. So the goal is essentially to have the shopper shop whenever, wherever, and however they want, and to provide them with a better experience. Now, the shopping center industry, as an example, has been very focused on things such as grocery anchored shopping centers and the core, power centers. But the reality is, if you think about it, what do you need Amazon for? It's for your Tide detergent. It's for your aluminum foil. That's not where the future of stores are, because you don't need to touch and feel. Actually, you don't want to touch and feel your Tide detergent, right? You want it to come to your house. You want to be able to use it. This is intended to be the experience component. And, when we have this concept, and the reality is, at the end of the day, it's reliant on the expertise that, Josh has with his portfolio, right? This is a premier portfolio, one that is very loved by institutional capital. And, it allows us to cater to that customer that wants the experience. And by combining it together and adding Josh's expertise and his company's background to it, the interest just on all levels sort of goes through the roof. So I just wanted to put that out there as a start. There's a few other components here. I don't know, Josh or Ryan, at any point, please interrupt me. I'm just going to start going through some highlight points over here with the deck.
Hey guys, if it's okay, it might be helpful if, since we're talking about the experience, what that looks like. Can you give us an example of what will satiate the things that you're doing in the lifestyle environment that satiates that customer demand to have an experience? What can you give us an example what that experience is?
Yeah, so first off, just to talk about the lifestyle center itself, Josh, you just talk about the makeup of a lifestyle shopping center and what that adds to the experience, and then we'll talk about the customer process and how that all blends in.
Yeah. So I kind of described it from a high level, but we've been developing lifestyle centers for 35 years, and across the country, and from California to Connecticut and everywhere in between. And so we have been focusing on the consumer experience and recognizing that, frankly, the malls were trying to trap a customer, where we were trying to provide convenience and experience for the customer. And so what we mean by experience, we frankly do a lot of fire and water, whether it's fountains and fire pits and wood burning fire pits to evoke smells. We have green spaces where we can hold events. I mean, prior to COVID, those events were large events that 5 to 10,000 people for races, for fundraisers. Well, actually, one that happened this week was we have a property in Indiana where we do a pumpkin drop. And so we had about 1,000 people out on, today is Thursday, so it was Tuesday morning. And literally we take a large pumpkin, it was a 1,400-pound pumpkin, and we drop it from a crane. And so it explodes, and then we have a fall festival for the day to bring people out and just kids bring out their kid, or parents bring out their kids for the experience of watching a pumpkin blow up. And I mean, we do concerts, we do chestnuts during Christmas season when it gets cold out. We do carolers. I mean, it's just anything that we can do, and especially since COVID, we do a lot of smaller events. So we have one property where we had a budget meeting yesterday. We were talking about, we have 350 events in 2022 scheduled on this one property. And so not all of them have that many events, but that's what we try to do, a lot of smaller events, and then maybe 10 to 20 people that come out for a yoga, or it could be 1,000 people that show up for like the pumpkin drop, or trick-or-treating, or Santa, et cetera. During COVID, we did drive-in movies where we put up movie screens and allowed people to reserve a spot, and they would come in their car, open up the hatchback, and watch a movie out the back. And so we did a lot of stuff like that just to create a place for people to go when we were all shut down. And so that kind of attitude has continued, where people are just seeking to congregate, to get out and see each other, and to spend time with other people. So that's where our lifestyle centers really play into that experience.
Yeah, super helpful. Thank you. It came to life in that, at least for me. So I'm sure everybody else appreciated it. Thanks.
Yeah, and the one thing that Josh and I talk about often is the blend between experiences and sales, right? So at the end of the day, you're a shopping center, and it has to be converted into sales, really what it comes down to. And when you're dealing with the outdoor shopping center as opposed to a mall, right, you're surrounded by these stores, right? The premier location is around where the greenery is, et cetera. And the key is to sort of establish it so that people walk into the stores, or the stores, participate in these types of experiences. Because at the end of the day, there's still this bridge between how do we value our store to vis-a-vis our e-commerce sales, and e-commerce obviously gains significantly, potentially over 35% from having a store in the market, right? So the key is to be able to do that, and especially as we work with the smaller brands with our incubation concept, where whether they're small to larger, we have a solution for them that has no upfront cost to them, but is extremely profitable for us. We make sure that it basically is driven by those retail sales as a whole. So that is great. Now we're talking about the experience of shopping from within retailOS for a customer. I'll go back a bit to this chart. So you're at home, you're shopping online, you could pick up in the store right away, and next day, or literally within hours, right? You could shop online and you could have it delivered to your home. You could return to the store, you could return via mail, right? And it gets sent back to the store itself. You essentially wherever, whenever, and however, and that's done by having the turnkey retail that it's for any size brand or retailer. But the key is it's for the retailers the millions of retailers that are online. Shopify itself has 1.7 million brands online, all of which would love to be in a high profit, low cost environment like a retail store. And contrary to the news out there, that's what a retail store is. It's a high profit, low cost environment. The difference is the upfront cost is higher than the upfront cost for e-commerce. But when you don't charge it upfront cost and you blend it into as a service model where you charge from the sales, then you're able to optimize the tenant mix within the space, and you're also able to have them save with regards to the cost they put into it, right? So that's sort of how we blend it. And ultimately what it comes down to is, like, when you take a look at this robotics, you got a store, it is a larger one, and they have this robotics in the back that has all the product that you could ever want, the unlimited aisle of online. You bring that into the store, And now the store is actually the place where you could get everything, no matter if it's like, it's not like we have it in stock to ship it to your house. We could have, no, it's there, it's right there. But you could also get it shipped to your home as well. So that's sort of part of the shopper experience that we have. This is just some examples of the types of product that we are looking at: a lifestyle shopping centers and also some downtown locations that serve as spokes, hub and spoke model, where not only from a logistics perspective does hub and spoke work, but also it works from a retail perspective, because you could have micro stores or smaller stores downtown that are just a 20-minute drive or 30-minute drive away from a larger store that has all the product as well, which helps in bringing product there on an ongoing basis, and also helps with regards to just people not having to travel a little further out. And ultimately, the way this all, scales is to have this logistics network or retail network, right, with regards to moving product that's decentralized across the country. And we're not just skipping over the middle states, but just these are the most well-known areas, and eventually this fills in, where you could optimize fulfillment, optimize logistics, similar to the way Amazon has done it, just only on a online and offline level, where no one is doing that right now. Even Target is doing it a little different way. But as I mentioned, Target, and I'm going to hand this off to either Josh or Ryan to take it from here, but Target has done an amazing job in being a platform to brands, digital native brands that want to be in the store. The problem is it's wholesale. You lose your connection to the customer. We're giving them the same infrastructure as Target is giving to them, in a manner that it doesn't cost them the customer relationship as well. And we're doing it at a cost that's less than Target, because Target must fit it into their existing infrastructure. We're using the latest technology, latest robotics to be able to bring that to market. So I don't know, just I'll touch on a few other points. I mean, we could talk through or Josh.
So I was just going to add some color about lifestyle centers, because we're quite bullish on the concept of lifestyle centers. And quite frankly, Josh has been way ahead of the curve than almost anybody on this. But I think when we think about coming out of post-COVID, the importance that they play in the consumer space is just simply this: the importance of having an extension of your community that is really easy to get to. It's not too far. There's not 10,000 people that you're sort of competing with, is very compelling. These are destinations and places for people to be. So when you think about the headwinds that a lot of shopping centers and malls are facing for traffic, and then you look at some of these images that we see here, it just makes a lot more sense in the future that the idea of experience, which is kind of waved around as an answer and an antidote for pretty much anything in retail, this is much closer to the answer. The second thing is that these properties have a significant, if not minimal, to non-existent exposure to large box sizes. So the format of them is not like dealt a hand of, we got 4 250,000 department store anchors, we're not sure what to do with them, right? So the type of complications and risks that come with these properties are much smaller. The other benefit I just think is super important is that as we become a regional and last mile fulfillment center on site, we also obviously use that product for retail experiences, so standalone stores, or in our marketplace concept called anchor shops, TBC on the name, is that we will cultivate a broad array of product that we can fulfill and save digital native brands money and shipping costs, because it's one-day ground, number one. And number two, we can use this product when there's a vacancy in the shopping center to cultivate and spin up our own pop-up. So let's just say that there's an experience we want to put together for summer, and we create our own summer store. It's not that hard because the product is sitting on site. And we're also building out turnkey types of experiences. Think of a shell that we can adapt with different props and techniques quite quickly and at a very minimal cost. We have the ability to actually do a lot of commercial things on site that otherwise would be incredibly complicated or near impossible in other models.
Yeah, I'll add one other thing from just the lifestyle center retail side is that I just wrote an article a couple weeks ago about short-term temporary tenants. And this is something that has popped up significantly over the last year and a half. We've always had shorter leases and temp tenants that have come into our properties, but the last year and a half, we've seen a dramatic uptick. And we really think it's because of the pandemic and COVID. You read about how people left the workforce and people are venturing on their own and reconsidering what they want to do with their lives. And so we have seen a lot of small businesses start up. And I'll say probably about 75% of those are women and minority-led businesses. And so it's been really interesting, and it's just kind of led me to further believe in this concept, because we can provide the space and they can open a store and they can test it out. But to be able to leverage our infrastructure and network to convert that from just a physical space into e-commerce and to really expand their brand is something that I'm licking my chops on trying to do. And I'll just, I mean, quickly, like it's interesting because 2 tenants that we've had in the last 6 months, pop-up tenants, short-term leases, are restaurants. And in the previous to this, my career, I've never seen a pop-up restaurant. They typically are very capital intensive, but these are entrepreneurs that are looking to start new concepts, and both of them are right now working out, knock on wood. And so the hope is that we expand them into long-term leases at the end of their 1 to 2 year terms. So I think we've been talking for a long time, about 40 minutes. We can obviously talk about this forever, but are there any questions out there? I mean, Shlomo, Ryan, and I talk about this stuff all the time. And so it's like, Arthur, I appreciate your questions, because we kind of gloss over stuff that maybe just.
I'm just trying to think of what others are thinking of. And
I was actually interject this. There's been so much media about retail, about logistics, about e-commerce, and there's some
supply chain, right?
Supply chain, right? That's a new thing, right? I mean, we've been harping on this since 2017, right? That's when we filed our original patent application. And, there's, too often the right at the Wall Street Journal has an opinion that doesn't drive reality, unfortunately. So I guess the real question is, like, if anyone, excuse me, any question with regards to what we're doing, and I'm, just generally the market, the industry. Heck, I'm in Panama. One of the reasons I came down here, aside from a few meetings, to see the Panama Canal, right? I'm actually from New York, guys, so I'm not from Panama. And it's just interesting. And here's an interesting thought, guys, just totally random, right? The Panama Canal has almost no, it's not like boat. It's open air, and every, like, I don't know, half hour or so, a new boat shows up. Then there's a gap in between, and you hear about all these trucks sitting outside the Port of Long Beach, all these boats sitting outside Port of Long Beach. I would have thought it would have been way more congested, which sort of tells you that perhaps the issue isn't the supply chain infrastructure in our country, right? And the fact that Prologis, the CFO, came out the other day and said, guys, warehousing is sold out in the US, right? So you have everyone chasing industrial, buying industrial. But it almost seems like, hey, if e-commerce isn't profitable in its own right when you scale, and they're the drivers, I mean, we can deal with a deal of receding tide. So, and then you also, a lot of people discount the retail industry, and I get what's going on with malls, but there are really valuable ways to turn this around. And something that we've been saying since 2017, and it's honestly, it's just amazing to me how the market's come to us, as opposed to us having to change. And we're here at a point where, like, we're bidding right now on a 1 million square foot property that costed about $1 billion to build in one of, caters to New York City. It's a great area. It's anything you possibly want from a zoning perspective, from a tenancy perspective. You got an Apple doing almost $6,000 a foot. You have a Whole Foods doing, $1,500 a foot almost, I believe. And it's great. And it was built for $1 billion, and we could pick it up for $250. And it's just like, wow, because the possibilities are absolutely endless. Why? Because their incumbent big anchors have gone, there's a couple that have gone dark, but then we could backfill them relatively easily with what we're doing with retailOS. And that's a game changer. So all of a sudden you could buy a property. It's literally an arbitrage play that has multiple different ways of financing, obviously starting with commercial real estate, but you add in logistics, you add in the software as a service model, you add in the retail services, and all of a sudden, this is like a REIT and multiple operating companies combined into one. And it's not even that far a departure from what real estate otherwise is. It's actually just the hotel model in the retail concept. But in the capital stack, the cost for the innovation is so small, but that magnifies over time to where if we just look at it as an example, I'll just pull up a slide over here. I mean, based on our numbers, like this is a deal, a $70 million deal. The capital stack is $70 million to acquire it as the one in Pennsylvania. We had five of that 75 million goes to innovation. Okay. And you're financing a significant portion of it. But over time, as it's phased in, you got a 30% jump in net income, financeable income, saleable income, capitalized income. So essentially, this on a $70 million purchase, you're adding $25 million in incremental value that, quite frankly, doesn't even exist in anyone's mind today. And you can get off the ground today because the demand for e-commerce fulfillment is so strong.
So these are pro forma numbers, or is this an actual executed?
This is a pro forma number on existing property where we would add fulfillment and the retail tomorrow, and we could literally bump this revenue significantly. And the demand for e-commerce isn't like we're projecting, oh, we could get someone to occupy this new type of concept. No, this is micro fulfillment. This is fulfillment, this is e-commerce fulfillment, this is pickup in store, etc. So this is not a theoretical. This is an actionable concept tomorrow in the hottest market out there today, which is e-commerce, but we're making those e-commerce brands profitable. We're fulfilling for them at numbers that are at better than almost every other fulfillment company out there. And while they have the product on site, we just put it into a store for them at no cost to them.
And satiate their demand that for next day delivery that Amazon gave everybody crack and they can't do without, right?
Yes, essentially it's crack that doesn't addict you. What is it? It's CBD essentially. Is really
right.
It doesn't have the addictive component to it.
Right. So do you see yourself using the micro fulfillment center for other than the retailers that are in the location? Like
initially, yes, that's where a lot of demand is going to come from. And then over time, as retailers come in, as brands come in, which is, we have a conservative horizon on that, although we have a great mousetrap how to bring them in, and it's not going through the regular real estate brokerage community. It's going through the guys that are servicing them right now. We have formed a great network of that. As that, we sort of phase out the guys that are e-commerce only, because that was just a bridge in cash flow. And we focus just on the synergy, so to speak.
Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah.
So what do you think, you can't do this in every market at the same time, or maybe you can because the properties that Josh has already exist, right? I mean, are you going to roll it out in piecemeal, or you can execute all at once?
So it's really a question of the investment strategy. So, we see one-off properties available that we can deploy it in, and there are multiple large portfolios that are ready to be picked off. And that's an area where we can, when we pick up those portfolios with the personnel with it, then we're able to expand pretty quickly, because it's really the fulfillment is a copy and paste type situation, because we're using robotics that's very flexible. So it's just a matter of replacing them in those locations. With regards to merchandising, it's a little slower, meaning the brand's coming in. That's why the brand horizon is slower than the fulfillment, phase in, so to speak. So, like this property is in Westchester in New York, where you literally, if you could give Walmart a fulfillment center in the Westchester area and you could have such a place, they'll sign tomorrow. They've been looking for a very long time. I don't think they found the place yet, right? So that's the best place for fulfillment, and it's also part of the retail. So that's one starting. The one in Pennsylvania also is a property that's great. It's surrounded by multiple multifamily developments, or home developments by one of the largest family housing developers out there. The name, I don't know, I should know the name, it just slips my head. So we're looking at high net worth, nicer areas, and then we fill it in. So markets that we're looking at, Chicago, Los Angeles, Austin, Houston. Josh got a site in Houston as well. Dallas, Josh got a site in Dallas as well. Southeast, the areas that are really hot right now, and it's a matter of filling it in. So initially it's a step, and eventually as you're able to build out the infrastructure, you can do it much quicker. My opinion, over time, this is the way retail is done. That's the change. It's about blending it, and no one else has been able to come up with a way to blend the DNA, so to speak, of
Do you-
online enrollment.
Have you been able to source good data about the alleged savings rate because people were, at home and weren't spending money? Is that soundbite legit? In other words, is there a pent up demand to start buying stuff?
Yes, yes. I mean, yes, yes, yes. I mean, since, like I said, we track our traffic via cell phone data every month, and so our data in September was higher than it was in September 2019 on traffic. And sales have been up from the beginning of the year, even though traffic was down a little bit. Like I think 2020 we were down 21% from the year before. And that's with being shut down 2 months. And so we've slowly been creeping back up to 2019 traffic, but our sales have exceeded 2019 because people are out spending more. And so especially this spring, we saw a lot of revenge spending. And I'll say that the women's fashion.
Wait a minute, what'd you call that? That's a great soundbite. What'd you call it? Revenge spending?
Revenge spending. People that were upset that they hadn't been able to go out in 6 months or a year and go out and spend money.
Yeah.
And so it started where alcohol sales went up, restaurant sales went up. And then when people actually started going out of their house more this summer, that's when the soft goods fashion sales started going up again. And I'll say women's fashion is still trailing from 2019, but across the board, our restaurant sales are above where they were in 2019.
Yeah.
And you think about it, this is with fewer hours. I mean, yes, the restaurants are having issues with hiring, and so they're paying more on to their employees, but they have fewer employees. And so right now, I mean, the restaurants are actually doing fairly well. Knock on wood. I don't want to jinx myself, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of spending out there.
Super cool. Revenge spending. I love it. It's like you're catalyzing omni-channel. So you're taking people who wouldn't otherwise be able to do it because of the cost, and not absorb things like Amazon can and just keep on moving.
Right.
And, that's what it sort of sounds like to me, right? You're catalyzing people who wouldn't otherwise be able to be, or are in, saving them money and catalyzing others to be in an omni-channel business.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going both ways. It's trying to encourage our existing retailers to move online in a stronger fashion, and vice versa. We expect there to be a lot of online only retailers are looking to come into bricks and mortar. I mean, I think we touched on this, but every retailer that is online only is looking to open stores. I mean, like literally, I don't think you can call one that isn't at least considering it. And like Shlomo said earlier, the question is the CapEx to actually open the stores and the experience, because we've opened some online retailers that put up a folding table and think that that's merchandising their store. And we have to come in and be like, no.
You can't do that to us.
Yeah, and what's interesting also, a lot of the big real estate owners, they've had a challenge in that, first off, there's been somewhat of an exodus from the industry. Guys that are more on the mall side and some of the older properties. And what they've done is they've tried to protect their better properties by putting their people there. And a lot of the properties that are secondary have just not gotten the attention that they have, that they should. So when you have a company like Pogue that has the DNA that it does, and every property is a top tier property, it's part of the process, the experience, right? But with others, it's an issue. And when the issue shows up, and the point being, when the issue shows up is when you have a digital native brand that wants to come in and you give them this huge list of what they need to do in order to do a 1-year lease. That's a massive challenge for them, right? You need to work with them closely and guide them, like Josh just said, sort of to explain to them how to open a store and how to be successful. So I think that's also a very important point, because what we're doing is essentially, a franchise model without inventory risk, essentially, is really what it comes down to. And we're passing through their payroll costs. We're passing through everything. So it's literally, they show up, the branding's in line, they help with the training of these guys of their employees, and they're good to go. So it's literally a turnkey situation. Another thing that's really interesting I've put out there, Every single asset class in real estate is under the gun. Every single asset class. Not that it's a problem, but it's different than what it's been. Why? Because technology is something that you could scale easily. Bricks and mortar, you can't move up, you can't transform a building. You know, here you go, now you got an office building. Here you go, now you got this, that, the next, the other, right? You can't do that. So the point is, just like when you used to have residential buildings and you had a shopping strip and then it became mixed use, you put the tailor and you put other people on the ground floor of the property. So it turned into mixed use. What we're doing is combining uses so that there's synergy. So it's not that you have a pencil and eraser and they're together, rather the pencil makes the eraser better and the eraser makes the pencil better because it's there together, it combines it. So you take things like cold storage. There's a shortage of cold storage in this country, right? When you combine multiple uses that can use a decentralized cold storage component in some of these properties, that's a game changer. And when you do it in a way that you can't even see it to the customer, but it's all there and it's working, then that also becomes a game changer. So that's, logistics, cold storage. Logistics, what we're doing, bringing the product closer to the customer. That's also, they're very innovative. We're adding residential to the properties, but not just like, hey, I have a property, it's a mall, it's dead, I got to knock down half the mall and put up residential, tail wagging the dog, but rather it's a community. You add office, which right now I know WeWork was out of vogue for a while. That type of concepts, like why do I have to rent from a landlord to rent to someone else? But to be able to put flexible office spaces where people work from home, but really ultimately they can't. I mean, I recently saw an email from a major company. This is hilarious. We work from home multiple days. We'll respond to you when we're all back in the office. It's like, really? Is that how it's supposed to happen? So when you're able to make it part of a community and have people get what they need, but do it in a manner that gives them ultimate flexibility and the combination just brings out a better net result for everything. And that's essentially what we're doing. We're creating a new mixed use product that is everything to a certain extent, everything to everyone as they need it, focused within each individual niche as they elect to use it.
Yeah, we got some folks that are itching for the ask. Can we get to that?
Please.
No, the ask, your ask.
Oh, our ask. I apologize. I thought someone wanted to ask a question. I was like, wow, this will be great. We're waiting for one. Yeah. So the ask is very simple. We are chasing these properties, and we'd love to talk more about these assets and about how we're going to be rolling this out. We are financing this very creatively in that we're using real estate to finance the real estate and finance the business component. Eventually, exit becomes, multiple possible exits that are here. It's a large undertaking, it's until you realize the size of the prize, to be honest with you, but generally it's a larger undertaking. And what we're looking for is not just another institution that's going to look at a deal by deal basis, but rather we're looking to get to know the right party that can sort of understand what we're bringing to the table, the pieces we're bringing to the table, and would like to participate in some of the investments that we're working on. Do I have to be more specific?
Well, maybe this would be helpful. So equity participation in the acquisition of the property, which by definition would also give them equity in your patented product, or just looking for the real estate investment in equity?
So the answer is, number one, everything's on the table for starters. Okay.
That's a good answer.
Number one, everything's on the table. As in everything, there's a long trip between, what we talk about and where we end up, obviously. So that would be the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that the property owns every part of the business, each property. It's licensed to the property irrevocably, so that when it's sold, it's passed on as well, licensed. So the investment in the property is also investment in the business. Over time, we believe properties are going to change the business. It's funny, if you think about it, Forest City was a real estate owner, but it wasn't a REIT. Then you have guys like DDR that are REITs, right? So they were businesses as opposed to actual real estate investment trusts. The same thing we're looking at it, right? We're essentially a hotel operating company within a hotel, so to speak, because retail is hospitality. So the business is combined with the real estate, and the revenues are flowing through essentially minus a certain management fee. With regards to the investment, Josh, I mean, why don't you talk a little bit about our usual structure, how people come in and how we're structuring it given the institutional interest, et cetera, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I mean, right now in the retail world, The most we can expect on the financing side from like bank loans is probably 50 to 60% leverage. So say use 60%, and so we're looking to raise 40% of the capital stack with equity. So whether that's an institutional partner or whether it's, other sources of equity, that's what we try to, or not try, that's what we have to do on every property that we acquire. And so the typical structure is like 95-5 or 90-10, where we put up 5 to 10% of the equity to invest with an institutional partner. And then we get, and we do all the operational side. Like Shlomo said, we are the managers, we have a leasing department, tenant coordination, development, construction management, everything like that, accounting. And so we have a full service platform that handles the back end of the management of the properties.
And so just the way you envision it now is property by property?
Yeah,
As
for now.
opposed to-
Shlomo and I've talked about creating a fund, but I think that's a couple steps down the road.
Yeah, and then also I'd add, Arthur, depending on the level of commitment that we'd reciprocate.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and that's totally fair. We do need to wrap it up, guys. Does somebody want to have a final comment, and then we'll make sure everybody gets in touch with you and wrap things up here?
I think I filibustered for the day, guys.
Yeah, but I love the, so simple, but the pencil and eraser analogy was awesome.
Yeah, my patent attorney explained it to me in our first call, like what's patentable, what's not, and what, all that stuff. Like they got to help each other. They got to create something new out of it. And that's what we feel we're doing.
Very cool. All right. Well, it's been really, really interesting. And thanks, guys, for being here. And we'll make sure everybody gets in touch, and thank everybody in the audience, the Family Office Insights members. You've been awesome through all this COVID business. And once again, thank you for sharing with us the only thing you can't make more of, and that's your time. Till next time. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Arthur.